Guys, Fractured Crown got fully spoiled a few days ago, and I've been kind of thinking about the cards, what decks they could slot into, what they counter, what they promote, and I think it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on. And they're also going to help promote decks coming out now, and decks that just are not good right now. And I think it's super interesting. There's a couple things I don't think people are really thinking of, or maybe they are, they just don't want you to know. Because Ascent is right around the corner, and get ready, because that tournament is going to be awesome. So let's just get right into it, and we're going to start off with Sylvie. So Sylvie, I'm going to reference my phone really quick, hold on. So when Sylvie is getting some payoffs, which I think the deck desperately needed, with Green Slime and Effigy of Gaia. So Green Slime is going to be really big for the deck. It gives it a beast that doesn't have a really big pride requirement that is a win condition. So it says, on enter, put 2 buff counters on Green Slime, which makes it a 2-3. And then on leave, put the buff counters that were on Green Slime on target ally you control. So there's a couple important things to note. Zephyr, for example, will trigger this, and it will come back. So it'll get his on enter again. So basically you're just giving a buff counter to something and preventing this from dying. And it puts all buff counters on Green Slime. So if you buff it up with other things like Young Beast Spawner or a couple other cards, you'll be giving the buff counters to whatever ally you want, which is really, really big. And then Effigy of Gaia is really important for wind. So it basically gives you the level just like the Beast Spawner ears. And whenever they activate a cleave, you'll be getting +2 health. That is so big because cleave is the Sylvie nightmare fuel. It's just insane. That thing ruins the deck. So those cards are going to be crazy. Just get ready. Sylvie is looking pretty good. And even if you're not playing Wind Sylvie, Water Sylvie gets Wild Heart Leer. Yep. So it's reservable, which is really cool. It lets the deck get a grind option, and it's in the material deck, which is important. But whenever you rest it to pay for a Harmony or Melody, you get to put a buff counter on something. And I already think Water Slime is really, really good, or Blue Slime, sorry. Blue Slime is very, very good. But there's not a lot of payoffs in blue at the moment, but there's a lot of new cards coming out in Fractured Crown that I think promote a lot of decks, like blue. So let's just get right into the blue cards that I think are really good. So we're going to start with Frostbind, which is the best water card and might be the best card in FTC. Maybe not like the most impactful, but probably still the best one. So it's a 2 cost, fast, negate target card activation unless the controller pays 2. Banish the card that had its activation negated this way. So this is big. This is the reason to be playing blue. Water is so good now. And there's a couple other cards coming out, Fractals, which lets you tap them to pay for 1 mana or 1 reserve cost. Now, blue is getting a really, really good Fractal and the most Fractals. This one is Fractal of Intrusion. So why is this card good? On enter, you can banish a card with floating memory from your graveyard. You will look at your opponent's memory and discard a card from it. What? You get hand removal and a negate with Frostbind, which is just insane. I can't believe they're doing that. So the water is looking like it's going to have a really good control strategy setup, especially with all the floating memory it already has in it. You're going to be able to level more freely, stop your opponent, and put up Fractals, which will get you, advantage over time, which is really, really important for decks. And that'll help not only the Water Sylvie decks, but there's a new Water Sword, which I think makes Water Warrior insane. Especially you can build a control or aggro. So let's get into the sword. Arondite Azure Blade. That thing is nuts. It is so insane. So on enter, you can banish any amount of cards with floating memory from your grave, and for every banished card, it gets a refinement counter. And this sword is going to get +2 attack for every refinement counter. So that's insane, because you can just build up to getting your Arondite as big as possible and then swinging with it on a turn. And it has 2 durability. So it's not even like you need to one-shot them. You can 2-shot them. And the control tools that Water has can definitely do that. So Water Warrior, Water Sylvie, Water, who knows? Water is going to be really good, and I think it needs to be explored a lot. But I know what you're thinking. The decks right now in Soul they're too fast. Like, Soul is way too quick. Is it really going to be able to keep up? Or what about all the cards that deck is getting? Well, you're right. I think Ensoul is looking to be a really, really strong contender, and it might continue to be the best deck into the next format, especially with Ensoul getting multiple swords that are within the Ensoul threshold that are to attack. So now Ensoul is going to be pushing more damage. And they're also going to be doing they're going to be having more durability counters, which means Dispersion is an even better card in these decks. Like, there's a lot of things going on for Ensoul, and they get Merlin. Merlin is a really good payoff in level 3. And it gives the deck another win condition, which is kind of cool. It doesn't solely revolve around Ensoul. You can kind of win the game just with Merlin's effect. So, lots of good stuff. Ensoul's looking really, really strong contender. And now I kind of want to talk about Rai as the last option. It got a lot of support, but Rai, I think, is in an interesting situation because it got a lot of support, but it also got a lot of counters. So, Voltaic Sphere is an insane card. It gives Rai a reason to play an ally removal spell, because I think right now Rai wants to be playing them. They're just not very good, or they're not as good as the other cards you could be playing. But this card is very good. So it deals 3 damage to target unit, or if it was an ally, it deals 5, which is very, very good. Exactly what Rai needed. And it helps push through the 4 health barrier that Lorraine has, even if they have a favorable mix, which is really, really good. And also as class bonus, banish it from the graveyard. Your next arcane element spell costs 1 less. So if you're activating this for, let's say, I don't know, Arcane Blast, you're getting 1 for the level because you banish it and it's an arcane banish card, plus 1 level, and it costs 1 less. That's insane. We're making Arcane Blast cost 2 less. And it's probably going to be a 4 of in the deck. I think it's so good. And another card that deck got was Develop Mana. So Develop Mana is going to put a level counter on your champion. It's a 3 cost. Doesn't sound that good, but there's, I think, a lot of slots in Rai that you don't realistically want to be activating. But I think this card is always good because right now it can feel kind of awkward to playing some cards, or maybe on your first turn you don't want to really commit, especially since there's a lot of draw hate coming out. This is a card that you can play no matter what. It contributes to your game plan, and it's putting your cards down so you can, banish if you need. You don't have to kind of commit to the board when you don't want to. This card is always going to be good. And lastly, Fire Fractal that Rai is possibly going to be using. It is on enter, deal 2 damage to target ally, or class bonus for mage, deal 4 damage to target ally instead, and reservable like all fractals are. So it's nice being able to, instead of paying 1 to deal 4 damage to an ally, you can pay 4, which is a lot more, but over the course of the game, you can be paying less and less and less over time. Pretty good card. I definitely like it a lot. And I think Rai has been getting a huge boost with those 3 cards, but Rai also gets a lot of counters, like the Material deck, Tithe. I don't have it pulled up, but it only lets you draw 3 cards in a turn, and that counts your draw for turn, so you only get 2. So if you Creative Shock, you're done. That's all you can do. There's no more Arcane Disposition, 3. You can't even activate Arcane Disposition because it draws you 3 cards, and this card says up to 3. You draw for turn. So they're definitely going to have to deal with that card. It's kind of like the Nullifying Lantern for Rai deck, so they're going to need to be playing Spurns or removal for it. And it's going to be a really big counter to that deck. And the card I think is going to be really impactful versus that deck, especially the versions right now where they're not playing any ally hate. If I can find it. Okay, there we go. I pulled it up. It says Blanche, the Sheltering Saint, which is amazing card art, by the way. That thing is beautiful looking. Oh, I love it. So it is a ally, 2-drop, 1/2, with fast activation, which lets you play it as kind of a flash from Magic the Gathering. It's just basically an instant spell, or a fast spell, but it's an ally. Its continuous effect is if another unit you control would be dealt non-attack damage, prevent an amount of that damage equal to the cards in your memory. So now every deck has a Veiling Breeze. That is insane. At minimum, if you activate Blanche, it's doing 2 less. But if you just played through your normal turn and you kept 3 in hand, you play it, you could be taking 5 less, 7 less. It's really, really strong, especially if your opponent isn't maining a lot of ally hate, or if you play it when you know they're going all out. It's a really, really good card. And since it's fast activation, they can go Arcane Blast, you add to the stack, you play it, and then if they don't have anything to interact with it, or if it's slow, they won't be able to kill it, which is really, really good. I think Blanche is going to be putting in a lot of work in the Rye matchup, so I don't know really where to put Rye, because they get a lot of good cards, but they get a lot of hate coming at them. So we'll see where they get put at. And now the last thing I want to talk about is the new Divine Relic card that got announced, and man, I think this card is really, really cool. It has a lot of implications in the future, but right now, the biggest thing I want to talk about is the interaction it has with Nullifying Lantern. So, Quicksilver Grail is the new Divine Relic. It says, on answer, banish a non-champion card from your material deck face down. And then, you can banish Quicksilver Grail whenever you want, and you may play the banish card. So, it's important to note that this card is being banished face down. Your opponent doesn't know what it is. That's important because in Fractured Crown, there's going to be a lot of Regalia coming out. Regalia hate for like wind, fire, water. They all got their own individual hate card. There's also cards already out, like Nullifying Lantern or Safeguard Amulet. The Tithe card from Fractured Crown is going to be pretty good. So you get to be playing these cards kind of whenever you want. And also, it allows for the element of surprise. So let's say the biggest thing I thought of, or at least the first thing, was Nullifying Lantern. So when you're playing against, say, Erupting Rhapsody deck, they're just going to go, Erupting Rhapsody, you're dead. Like, that thing's going to do 12 damage. But the counter is Nullifying Lantern. And of course, every Erupting Rhapsody deck I played against, they always go Spurn to Ash, target, Ember Song, Erupting. 3-card combo. They roll me every time. Now, what this card allows you to do is you go Quicksilver Grail, and guess what? The Fire Regalia interaction is slow. So to be able to interact with this card, they're going to have to go super neg. So they go Ember Song, that's fine, it resolves. Erupting Rhapsody, okay, add to the stack Quicksilver Grail, play Nullifying Lantern, because you didn't know it was there, or you may have predicted it, but you can't interact with it because Quicksilver Grail's there. It resolves, and then your card resolves, Erupting Rhapsody. It can't banish from the graveyard because nothing is fire. That just shuts down basically their whole combo. They lost 2 of their win conditions. It's really, really strong versus that deck. And I was really thinking Erupting Rhapsody was going to be a strong deck for the upcoming format, so it's cool to see that it got a really big counter. But at the same time, let's say they go, oh, I'm going to Spurn to Ash Quicksilver Grail. Well, you can just chain it and then play the Nullifying. So they have to have 2 Spurn to Ashes or 2 Regalia interaction. So that card is going to be really, really strong. Is it going to contend every single deck playing Grand Crusader's Ring? No. +1 is insane, especially in the material deck. But it is a card that has an answer to some really, really annoying decks. So if your deck really, really struggled with Erupting, you now have an answer to it, which is really important. So yeah, that's kind of everything I want to talk about in Fractured Crown. Awesome stuff coming. Like, the art of these cards is really, really cool. And I can't wait for a shakeup of the format. I mean, as much as I love playing Fire Lorraine, Wind Lorraine, Rye, let's branch out. Let's see what Water's got. Let's see if Sylvie can make a stand finally. Come on. I believe. I want to play Sylvie so bad. And yeah, that's all I got. So I'll see you guys next time.